Welcome to the MINDFUCKEry Podcast, a safe space where we explore the topic of emotional abuse and how it affects people's lives. I'm Elizabeth, your host. I'm an author and thriver of emotional abuse, and I also work with clients helping them heal the wounds from the abuse that they've experienced. And it's through my own experience I know the pain it causes and how it destroys lives. Emotional abuse can be insidious and difficult to recognise. It's real and it's devastating. It can cause long-lasting effects on our mental, emotional, spiritual, physical and financial health. And as someone who has experienced emotional abuse firsthand, I understand the pain, the confusion, abandonment, betrayal and shame that survivors often feel. It can leave deep and lasting scars on our psyche, self-esteem and relationships, and it can make us doubt our own self-worth, feel trapped and powerless, and struggle with trust and intimacy. Healing is possible, and through this podcast I hope to create a community of support, validation and empowerment for those who have been affected by emotional abuse. So whether you're a survivor seeking validation and healing, or someone who wants to learn more about emotional abuse and how to support a loved one who is going through it, this podcast is for you. Thank you for tuning in, and let's start the conversation. In last week's podcast, I was celebrating a whole year of the MINDFUCKEry podcast, and I mentioned wound talking. For me personally, I find lyrics very powerful, and I think I mentioned moonwalking, but it wasn't the tune that was barely audible trying to break through. It was actually Jive Talking by the Bee Gees. And then I looked up the lyrics and it's just your jive talking. You're telling me lies. Jive talking. You wear a disguise. Jive talking. So misunderstood. Jive talking. You're really no good. I love a lyric when they stand out and talk. Wound talking is something that I am talking about and showing you on my 3-day challenge. I'll put a link to that in the notes below. It's something I do with my one-to-one clients. If you're serious about healing, these wounds are made for talking, and they really are. And there are all sorts of wounds. There are the wounds that are caused by injury and ones that are caused by medical procedure. Both of these will have trauma attached. The emotional ones are a little bit more tricky to spot or to understand, because they are the ones that are hidden very deeply inside you. And when I wrote my first book, Finding Lily, I added in there the Hopi creation story. And I also used it at the beginning of the A to Z of emotional abuse. The creator gathered all of creation and said, I want to hide something from humans until they're ready for it. It's the realization that they create their own reality. The eagle said, give it to me. I will take it to the moon. And the creator said, no, one day they will go there and find it. The salmon said, I'll bury it at the bottom of the ocean. Creator said, no, one day they'll go there too. The buffalo said, I will bury it on the Great Plains. The Creator said, they will cut into the skin of the earth and they will find it there. Grandmother Mole, who lives in the breast of Mother Earth, who has no physical eyes to see, but with spiritual eyes, said, put it inside them. And the Creator said, it is done. And wounds are the same. They get buried deep. And I used to have a tagline. I haven't used it much over the last 12 months. And that was turning grit into gold. And I wish there was a method in my madness, because I actually recorded a meditation for YouTube on Saturday for peace, balance and trust, using the pearl's shell for protection, the grit that gets into the oyster, and then during that process of the oyster trying to get that grain of sand out, produces a pearl. And anyone would think that I'd actually planned all this stuff, but I had no idea how that was going to relate into what we're talking about and what I'm talking about this week, but it just does. I wish I really had a plan to some of the stuff I talked about. It just comes from somewhere inside. So I want to talk about wounds, and they really do have a voice. I really want to quickly strip it back, because I don't talk about narcissistic abuse or sociopaths or psychopaths. I don't label people, and there is a reason for that, because nobody can diagnose someone as having a narcissistic personality disorder unless they're trained to do that. And it's really hard in the UK. I think it's easier in other parts of the world, particularly the US. They're more aware of this type of behaviour. But let me just say, and I haven't used this for a while, there is a difference between someone having an affair and somebody being emotionally abusive. Doesn't make someone who's had an affair a narcissist. Relatively healthy people do have affairs, and they do tell lies to protect themselves. And it doesn't put them in that category of automatically being a narcissist, a sociopath, or a psychopath. For whatever the reason of the affair, there will be pain. There will be an abandonment and a shame and a betrayal wound. But the wounded party, the person left behind, picks themselves up and they get to the same point as the person who's had the affair, and they might say, do you know what, this actually was the best thing that could have happened to us. Neither of us were happy in the relationship. Our relationship has gone as far as it could go. They're able to get to that same point. They are hurt. There is betrayal there. There is a form of abandonment. There is shame that they weren't, whatever it is that's going on in their life. Emotional abuse is horrific. It's a gradual process where one person creates drama and distraction and very slowly destroys the other person. And they do this on every level. I spoke about mental and physical and emotional, spiritual and financial. They destroy every part of their life. And when that person has nothing left, they move on. For some, they are lucky. They do get out of these relationships, but they still have the wounds and they will still have been triggered in that relationship. They will have been subjected to the self-doubt and the gaslighting and the mindfuckery that happened in those relationships. So in both scenarios, there will be lots of questioning at the end. And with the relatively emotionally healthy cheating ex, they will give you the answers. They will want you to get closure. And the purpose of that is they want to move on. That relationship for them has changed. They have either met somebody else that they want to move on to, or they've used somebody to get out of that relationship, but they will want you to have closure. However, with the emotionally unhealthy partner, you won't get that closure. Why would they want to give you that? You are an object to them and something that in their eyes they will always have control over. They want you to stay hurt. They want to see you hurting. And this is why it's so important to speak to these wounds, to talk to them, because they hold the answers and they will tell you how to get the closure, how to heal, and on a level that you may never have even realized that was possible. I tried to thank my ex as we went through the ending of our relationship, and I'm still not 100% sure if he faked being sad. At the time, I thought it was quite genuine, but I recorded a YouTube video a few weeks ago on the dark empath. It wasn't one of my best videos, I will admit, but the dark empath is the damaged empath. They can tune into the emotions of other people, but they then use it to their advantage. They will take advantage of that other person and manipulate them. So when I spoke to him, the other option I have is that his tears were of a person who didn't want to look bad or be that bad person, because they are really conscious of how they come across and what other people think of them. I was out this weekend. I went for a walk. It was actually supposed to be work related, but it actually turned into more of a social. And it was a sunny day and we ended up in a pub garden for a soda water or two. And as we were getting ready to leave, I realised the last time that I'd been in that pub was the night that I told my ex I discovered him on a dating website. And as I was relaying the story, I was saying that he went to speak to a couple that we both knew, and they gave him the details of a marriage counsellor. So basically, I discovered him on a dating website, and I drove 20 odd miles to the town that I thought he was in, or that's where he told me he was, to look for him, see if I could catch him out. And as I was heading over there, he actually called me to say that he'd arrived home and realised that I had his car keys with the house key on it and he couldn't get in. So I suggested that he wait in the pub. Now, I think he was really quite angry, and I'm not sure whether the anger was due to the fact that he'd have to wait for me to get there and I was 20 miles away, or that I had followed him. He came back with this information and I said to him, "Did you tell them why I followed you?" And he went all sheepish and and childish and said no. And I realised later that this was part of his exit route, and it was the start of a smear campaign of the crazy ex, and he actually had a trail of those. And during my earlier videos on YouTube, I knew, and I used these inner knowings to describe the process of them wanting to get out. I had felt him detach. There were a couple of times I felt him detach. I told him one day that I'd run out of money, and that's why I started to add financial to the list of areas that they destroy and damage your life. The financial coercion that I experienced and I wrote off as planning for our future, I realised later was fake. Emotional abuse inflicts deep wounds, and these wounds are so deep that they go to the depths of your soul. So when I knew the relationship was over, I actually thanked him for breaking me open and allowing the light to come in. And when I was writing the A to Z of emotional abuse, I wanted to add in a section at the end to help with the healing process. So not only have you got the A to Z of the terms that you might hear on this journey, I wanted to add that in to help you heal. And I said in one of them, I said, there were so many questions. You might be asking, why did this happen to you? What did they even love me? If your partner had an affair, you might have an understanding that they did, and then they fell out of love and you grew apart. But you don't get that with emotional abuse. And I believe that there's a beautiful lesson to be learned from these relationships when that wound is ready to be healed. And you might be asking, why would they do that? That was another question. So they love to play with people and their emotions. It gives them a sense of power. It's also, there's a mask of insecurity that they're covering up. They really are insecure people. They shame people before they're shamed. They abandon people before they're abandoned. And they make people feel guilty to extract the supply that they need. They feed off people and their energy, and this is how they suck the soul out of you, much like a dementor. Your wounds have a voice, and maybe like a magnet, they're actually calling out to someone to come and hurt them so that they can talk to you. Some people will just want to move on and get out of the pain that they're in or that they've been left with, because it is very real. It's a pain that brings you to your knees. It stops you breathing. It stops you being able to interact with people. The trauma runs so deep, and they could be old wounds from childhood. It might be that you've heard yourself asking, what's wrong with me? Why you weren't good enough, or why I'm not good enough. These are a couple of mine. Another was that, what did I do to deserve this? Why does this keep happening to me? I also had a couple of vengeful ones as well. Human experience and all that. So I've been working with wounds of trauma for about 20 years. It's actually over 20 years. I started with the wounds from our past lives that came through into this life for healing. And I started working then with ancestral wounds that affected our family line. And you might see a pattern in your family if you look. Then going through this again, I realised there were childhood wounds that were linked to both the past life and ancestral patterns that needed healing. So for me, it was, and it has been, a fascinating journey. And using my knowledge and listening to my body, I was able to talk to my childhood wounds and change how I wanted to react to the pain. And it was when I was about waist deep in the divorce, I discovered that when I was grounded, I was able to get out of rumination about 90% quicker. I could sit down with the pain and say, if he loved me, he wouldn't have done this, he wouldn't have done that. Look at these patterns. He said he wanted to change and you believed blah, blah, blah. And it got me out in a few hours rather than 5 days that it had been taking me. And there was one day and I had this need, this craving. I can't put an exact feeling on it, but it was a needing. I needed to hear his voice. I needed to have his arms wrapped around me. And I sat on the edge of the bed with these emotions and I spoke to them, and I realized actually I just needed attention. I needed someone to love this little girl. She was 3 years old. I needed someone to tell her it was all going to be okay. And some of my other healing work and discoveries led me to realize, because I knew deep down right at the beginning that I'd been been stripped back, that there was something else going on and I'd been unprogrammed. But this actually worked for me because I was able to reparent in some areas of my life. And do you know what? I want the same for you as well. And perhaps for selfish reasons, maybe not so selfish, by healing your wounds, you are healing your family line. You might not realize who is watching you, but somebody is thinking, wow, she's amazing, or he's amazing. Look how they've changed their life around. Look what's been going on. They might be inspired to do something similar and heal their family line, heal their wounds. So in a small way, your actions will be having an impact not only on you and your family, but those ripples go out much further. Wound talking is so powerful. And if you'd like to find out more, come and join me. I'm running a challenge. I think I said it at the beginning of the podcast. I'll be helping you talk to your wounds, speeding up that healing process. I will also be giving you the tools to help you take control of your life. And some of the other things I'll be doing or looking at is interrupting the trauma and creating a safe space to heal. And if you'd like to work with me, learning all these techniques that I've put together, created, you can come and join me on my monthly membership, which starts in May. You can stay forever, you can join for a few months, and when you're ready to fly off towards your destiny, you can do that. Empowerment has always been the foundation of anything that I do with my work, and it will be for this as well. We're going to start the month with a bundle of goodies, which will include a gorgeous workbook, some journaling prompts, and monthly meditation recorded for you. And I'll be running a live trainings throughout the month, a drop-in cafe called Positivity, where you bring your cup of tea or coffee or whatever it is that you want to drink. And on both the 3-day challenge and in the membership, we cover closure, getting closure, healing those wounds. These wounds were made for talking. It's such a positive step and it's such a healing step, and it rounds off your healing and changes your life. So thank you for listening to this week's MINDFUCKEry podcast. I hope it has provided you with some insight, some inspiration, maybe validation on your healing journey. Healing isn't linear. You deserve to live a life you're born to live and to thrive in your own unique way. If you need support and resources, don't hesitate to reach out to me. You can visit my website. I'll put the link to the free resources in the description box. And there are other places like your local refuge if you need protection, but they actually have much more information than that as well. They're able to help you no matter what situation you're in. And as always, I'm sending you loads and loads of love.